Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. We were discussing Alagaddupama Sutta, the simile of the snake, and which is available in the Majjhima Nikaya. This is the 22nd Sutta. And as we can remember, we were discussing how one of the monk's pernicious views have caused certain kind of conflict, and he's telling that what Buddha has mentioned as danger to the path is not dangerous or not sort of causing any type of a danger. And then the other monks went to him and tried to convince him, but he was strongly holding that wrong view, and as a result of that, those monks have to inform the Buddha, and then Buddha summoned that particular monk, whose name is called Aritta, and then Buddha also asked whether he is maintaining such kind of a wrong view, and he admitted that. And then Buddha vehemently criticized him and for holding such view, and asked where Buddha has mentioned such thing, and again questioned the other monks in order to verify whether any of them also have such type of wrong view, and then fortunately none of them are having such wrong view, such pernicious view. And then Buddha was basically informing Venerable Aritta that the sensual pleasures, sensual gratification are again and again causing some kind of a danger to the spiritual life, particularly when one becomes a monk or a nun. So he is very much dedicated to the life of celibacy, and as a result of that, Buddha again and again highlight that the value of the celibate life, particularly for monks and nuns, and they have to adhere to that. And if someone is telling that this sensual gratification is not harmful for such type of celibate life, then it is not the truth. And then Buddha further mentioned it is necessary to have sensual desires, it's necessary to have various signs of sensual desires and some thoughts of sensual desire in order to involve with sensual gratification. That one can engage in sensual pleasures without sensual desire, without perceptions of sensual desire, without thoughts of sensual desire. So that is impossible. So this is a very interesting statement. So mind has to be preoccupied, mind has to be fairly overwhelmed by sensual thoughts, signs, perceptions, and kind of thoughts, kind of desires. Then only one would be able to engage with sensual gratification. And then later Buddha come up with that simile of the snake, which is the name of the sutta, where Buddha mentioned sometimes people are learning the Dhamma in order to fight with the others, in order to go ahead with certain amount of conflict with the others. So in order to overwhelm or condemn the others, to go with debates. So that is not the proper way of learning the Dhamma. It is very much like catching a snake, a poisonous snake, from its tail or from its trunk, because ultimately it will turn back and bite. On the other hand, if someone wants to catch a snake, so he has to use the proper stick, and then using that he can properly catch the snake without getting any kind of a harm. So similarly, Buddha mentioned, if one is learning the Dhamma with proper perspective, with proper attitude, so that means he is learning and he is trying to live according to it, and again basically trying to understand through the wisdom, and again through wisdom he is now practicing. He is using the Dhamma in order to overcome various defilements. So that would be the basic, or that would be the necessary attitude one has to have. So that is something Buddha mentioned, the proper attitude that one has to have in order to learn the Dhamma. And after that, Buddha further mentioned another simile. So that is the simile of the raft, where Buddha mentioned the Dhamma is for crossing over to the other shore, but not for grasping. And here again, Buddha is giving a simile, that the simile of the raft. So someone is preparing a raft. Since he understood that this shore is dangerous, this shore is fearful, and he wants to cross to the other shore, which is safe and free from fear. But unfortunately, there is no boat, there is no ship, there is no ferry, or there is no bridge. So he has to find some way to prepare a raft. So he is using various branches, trees, grass, etc. to prepare the raft. And after even prepared the raft, so he has to use his own effort, using his arms, he is using his hands, he is using his feet. So using all his effort, he has to cross the shore. And interestingly, Buddha asks, after he crossing the shore, if he is carrying the raft on his shoulder or on his head, whether that is the correct thing to do. And then monks say no. The proper thing is either to keep the raft on the bank, or simply let it go. And that is the way Buddha mentioned that even the Dhamma has to be abandoned, and not about the other things. So even the Dhamma, which is most useful to cross over, to become enlightened, so that also has to be abandoned once one becomes enlightened. It is not that before one becomes enlightened that one has to let go. Rather, one has to let go the Dhamma only when one becomes an Arahant. So one's attitude towards the Dhamma is something like that, where one is using it, trying to understand it, live according to it, and again ultimately when the benefit is taken and completely was able to cross to the other shore, one can let go of it. And then we were discussing about 6 standpoints, where Buddha mentioned that these standpoints are causing other various pernicious views to arise. And 5 of them are very much related to the 5 khandhas, 5 aggregates. If one is considering form aggregates as me, myself, mind, so that can lead to a pernicious view. If one is thinking, if one is assuming that these feelings belongs to me, they are mine, or they are myself, that also can lead to a pernicious view. Similarly, if the perceptions, if one believes that they belong to me, they are mine, they are myself, that also can lead to a pernicious view. If one believes that various sankharas, various mental formations belong to me and they represent me, they are myself, and that also can lead to a pernicious view. Further, if one is thinking what is seen, what is heard, what is known through the nose, tongue and the body, and what is cognized by the mind, and if anything that he has pondered, he has thought about, so any of those, if one is thinking they belong to me, they are mine, they are myself, that also can lead to a pernicious view. The last one is where one thinks that there is a little self within myself, and after the death, so I become united with a mighty self, or kind of a eternal self. So ultimately I also become eternal, everlasting, permanent. So if one is holding such type of a view, and one is love to that kind of a view, and that also can cause to a higher level of pernicious view. So these are the very basic kind of views which can happen within oneself, certain standpoints, certain basic type of views, and from which various other very complicated, very strong pernicious views can arise. So we discuss all these things, and then Buddha mentioned that the Arya Savaka, the noble disciple, don't have such kind of a view. So he, as much as possible, he is abandoning all these views, because he understands that through his own wisdom, through his own practice, that these five aggregates are not self. Five aggregates are not myself. Five aggregates does not belong to me. They can't behave as I wish. So likewise, through his own investigation, he is able to understand the reality of these five aggregates. So he is no more holding these kinds of standpoints with respect to five aggregates, as well as to the other last one with respect to the everlasting self. So, and then as a result of that, Buddha mentioned, since he regards them thus, he is not agitated about what is not existent. So he doesn't think that any of these aggregates belong to me, myself. And as a result of that, when he abandoned everything, there is no agitation. Then interestingly, another monk who was listening to the Dhamma sermon, he asked the interesting question. Venerable Sir, can there be agitation about what is non-existent externally? Can there be agitation about what is non-existent externally? So there is nothing existing which belongs to me, myself, externally, or as a result of such understanding, is there any possibility of having any kind of an inner agitation? Then Buddha mentioned, yes, it is possible. Then he explains how it can happen, because basically we think that certain external things belong to me. Certain external things are myself. Say for example, when I see my car, when I see my house, when I see my children, my husband, my wife. So likewise, we all have different kinds of possessions, and we all believe that they belong to me. They represent me. They are myself. So they may be external things, but we have a strong possessive attitude. We really love them. We really want them. We really hold them. And due to some reason, if everything collapses, everything or whatever, one of them are destroyed, then we are really agitating. Our minds become really agitated, really panic, really frustrated, because we thought that they belong to me. So therefore it is not that difficult to understand such kind of agitation when external things are destroyed, when external things doesn't behave as I wish, when they are going through certain changes. So I can't bear it if I have a strong attachment to them, if I believe that they belong to me. So all those possessive attitudes actually cause inner agitation. So that is what Buddha mentioned about that. And then that particular monk again asked another question. Venerable Sir, that can there be no agitation about what is non-existent external? So the opposite he is asking. Can there be no agitation when one knows that nothing existing externally? Nothing belongs to me externally. So then Buddha says, yes, that's also possible. So through wisdom, if one is understanding there is nothing belong to me externally. So what is available outside are, maybe if I consider the physical side, physical world, they merely belong to the five aggregates. They merely belong to the, say, particularly to the Rupa aggregate, materiality aggregate, most of the physical world. And they have their own causes and conditions. So I have no control. So likewise, if one understands that deeply, when they are changing, there is no much agitation. And similarly, if I think that, if I understand, so this world is based on various causes and conditioned. The people's mind are conditioned, people's minds are constantly influenced by their own defilements. Many other climatic conditions and various other reasons are causing everything to go through different stages, different changes. So if one has such kind of a deep understanding about the situation, then it is very unlikely when they are changing, after they have changed, that the mind become agitated, because one deeply understood that. Already understood that they are quite vulnerable, they are quite impermanent, and therefore one is not expecting any type of permanency, any kind of stability from such kind of a vulnerable, impermanent, transient world. So if such a deep understanding is available within oneself, so then he not become agitated. Even when he understood that what is external does not belong to me, there is no such kind of an agitation. So this is the second part that Buddha mentioned as a result of that monk's question. Then he asked another question. Venerable Sir, can there be agitation about what is non-existent internally? Now internally we think that I am available, I am here, I am living, this body belongs to me, these thoughts belong to me, these perceptions belong to me, these feelings belong to me, and all different cognitions belong to me, what I think also belong to me. So likewise, internally we have a strong self-view, strong personality view. And here Buddha mentioned such a person who thinks that there is self here, there is a soul here, there is a lasting self here, either within the body or a self which is holding the body, have a kind of relationship with the body, or that self is inside the body, or whatever the way. So if one have such kind of a view, and on such to such person, now Buddha mentioned, okay, he listened to the Dhamma, either from the Buddha or one of his disciples. Now they are telling the opposite. They are telling the Tathagata or disciple of the Tathagata teaching the Dhamma for the elimination of all standpoints, decisions, obsessions, adherences and underlying tendencies, for the stilling of all formations, for the relinquishing of all attachments, for the destruction of craving, for dispassion, for cessation, for Nibbana. Now this is the theme of the Buddha's teaching in a way. So Buddha's teaching is for dispassion, to letting go of all attachments, to understand the impermanence, to relinquish all attachments. So likewise, when this kind of a Dhamma being heard, so the previous person which we were discussing, who is having a strong adherence to the five aggregates, now he become threatened. So and he thinks, okay, I am going to be annihilated, I am going to be destroyed, and I am not going to exist, I shall be no more. So this kind of a fearful thought can arise within him, and agitation can arise within him, because he strongly believes there is a self within oneself. There's a strong self within the body, within the feelings, within the perceptions, within the mental formations, or within the cognitions. Now, for such person, the real Buddha's teaching actually a kind of a threat. So he now become agitated, he is now weeping, and Buddha mentioned when he was making the lion's roar in the Mahasihanada Sutta, that certain long-lasting devas, they were troubled, they were frightened, because they couldn't remember when they were born. Many eons they were living, and they couldn't remember when they were born. And similarly, they were existing for long time, and they got the wrong notion. Now they are permanent, they have an eternal life. When Buddha's teaching was heard, they become troubled, they become frightened, because they now understood, okay, we are going to die. This is not a permanent state. Everything is impermanent. So this type of teaching is in a way kind of a threat to that kind of eternalist who is expecting an eternal life, everlasting life. For such person, therefore, understanding internally there is no self, understanding internally there is no anything substantial, then he become agitated. So this is the next part Buddha answer, and that same monk is now asking, Venerable Sir, can there be no agitation about what is non-existent internally? So the opposite now he is asking. So when someone understood that nothing existing internally, nothing substantial existing internally, there's no self existing internally, is there a possibility for have no agitation? So then Buddha mentioned, yes, it is possible. That is possible for a noble person. Because a noble person is now gradually trying to understand Buddha's teaching, and he now trying to even practice the Buddha's teaching, and as a result of that he understands the proper nature, the correct nature, the reality of the form aggregate. He understands how these various elements are constantly changing. The four elements, the earth element, water element, fire element and heat element. So more and more he observes their behavior, he may understand, okay, they doesn't belong to me. They are following their own agenda. And they are subjected to various other influences coming from the outside. Maybe the climatic changes, maybe the personal involvement, ups and downs of the other conducive conditions. So likewise there may be various other situations which are influencing the behavior of these four elements. So as a result of that, so one is slowly understanding their true nature, and now he becomes more and more dispassionate. He is not trying to hold things. He slowly understands the proper nature. So when Buddha or a disciple of the Buddha is talking about it, when they are talking about the impermanence, they are talking about the impermanence of the body, how constantly they are changing, and their foul nature, and they doesn't belong to me. So likewise, when the Buddha or a disciple is talking about proper nature, understanding the proper nature about these five aggregates, no, this person is not agitated, because he also in line with that teaching. He also is now trying to practice according to that teaching. And he himself has understood that. It is not that mere belief. Rather, he himself is now continuing his practice, and slowly he also is understanding their true nature. So when that true nature is slowly understood, so hearing the Dhamma become further a motivation, for the further encouragement to realize the truth rather than an inner agitation. Because his little understanding may not have strong power, but when Buddha's teaching is again and again heard, so that gives a lot of motivation, that gives a lot of encouragement to further practice. So he may become even happy, delighted to hear that Buddha's teaching, that he is strongly telling, that Buddha is strongly telling that about Nibbana, about the cessation, say about dispassion and how things are impermanent. So such kind of a teaching becomes more and more interesting for this kind of person. It is not an agitation. So therefore Buddha mentioned, so it is possible to have no agitation when one understands there is nothing substantial available inside. So these are the discussion with respect to the agitation which has happened as a aftermath of this teaching of the standpoints, 6 standpoints, the Ditthana. And after that, now further Buddha wants to teach the Dhamma to the monks about the impermanence and about the non-self. Now interestingly here Buddha give a kind of a challenge. So Buddha simply tell bhikkhus, you may well acquire that possession that is permanent, that is everlasting, eternal, not subject to change, and that might endure as long as eternity. And Buddha mentioned to the monks, so you can grasp, you can cling, you can hold. What you need to grasp, what you need to hold is something permanent, not subject to any change. which is everlasting, which is lasting till the eternity. Such a thing you can grasp. It's a kind of a challenge. Now, he is further asking a question, but do you see any such possession, bhikkhus? So, do you know any kind of such possession? Then, of course, monks answer, there is no such possession. They can't recognize such kind of a possession, which is everlasting and not subject to change and lasting till the eternity. So they can't find out such kind of a everlasting possession. Then Buddha mentioned, yes, I also can't find out such kind of a possession. I too do not see any possession that is permanent, everlasting, eternal, not subject to change, and that might endure as long as eternity. So, and again, what the point highlighted here is that Buddha and the monks, so they understood, so whole this world is impermanent and nothing everlasting, there is nothing substantial. And if there is something substantial, yes, it can be grasped. It is worthy of grasping, but there is no such thing. So it's a kind of a convincing statement by the Buddha. See that things are impermanent, so there is therefore no point of grasping. And now similarly, Buddha mentioned again, you may well cling to that doctrine of self that would not arouse sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief and despair in one who clings to it. Now this is a view. Any kind of a view, if one is grasping, now how one may behave according to that view, or how one may become frustrated as a result of that view. Because someone may come and challenge to that view, and then one has to protect it, one has to safeguard it, one has to deny the other person's view, because one is already having one's own view and one is holding that strongly. And if one is challenging to that view, then one becomes really agitated, one becomes threatened. And as a result of that, one may have a certain despair within oneself. Always one is going through kind of a frustration, because one never know when someone is going to come and challenge, because there is something to protect, there is something to safeguard. So one's own view is something representing oneself. So within a discussion, if one is trying to put forth one's view, if someone is challenging, then it is very much like that I hurt. I become really agitated. I become really hurt. I am being challenged. So that is how one is taking. So it is not merely a view now. So it's a view which is holding, which is one's own grasp. And as a result of such kind of strong grasping, so there is going to be a despair, a sorrow, lamentation, agitation, frustration, all these things can happen. So here the Buddha's challenge is, you can hold any view which is not causing such kind of sorrow, lamentation, agitation, pain, grief, etc. And then he is asking, do you see such kind of doctrine? And then the monks say, no, we can't find out such doctrine which is not causing sorrow, lamentation, despair, grief, etc. So that means any kind of a doctrine, if we are holding, if we are grasping, if we are tightly belonging, so that is ultimately going to be a frustration. So therefore nothing we can hold permanently. Here actually we can talk about even the Sammaditthi. So Sammaditthi is not something that we can hold. It is not a doctrine in that sense. It is not a kind of a permanent thing that we can hold. It is talking about the opposite, that so one's mind has to be released. So whatever the view, whatever the doctrine, whatever the statement, so all that has to be abandoned, all that has to be relinquished. So that is in a way the Sammaditthi, where one is not encouraged to hold anything. One is not encouraged to grasp anything. One is very much encouraged to let go things. Understanding that how things are impermanent, how things are sort of going through certain unsatisfactoriness. So what is arising is suffering, unsatisfactoriness, and what is ceasing is also suffering. So likewise, such kind of a strong, proper understanding is not going to hold anything. So mind is not going to occupy by any of things. But here Buddha is talking to the typical other wrong views where one is trying to hold, one is trying to possess, one is trying to grasp, which ultimately cause inner frustration, which ultimately can cause inner grief, lamentation, pain, etc. Then the next part, because there is being a self, would there be me? What belongs to a self? Yes, Venerable Sir. Or there being what belongs to a self, would there be for me a self? So this is a kind of a dualistic statement where, say, when I exist, there are certain things which belong to me. When there are things belong to me exist, then it can cause the notion of I. So they are interdependent. So thinking that one is available, thinking that self is available, thinking that I am available, so that can cause to link to something which belongs to me, belong to that particular person. But on the other hand, when one is thinking, okay, these belong to me, it can cause the self of I, the notion of I. So they are fairly interdependent. Now the statement here, because since a self and what belongs to a self are not apprehended as true and established, then this standpoint for views, namely that which is the self is the world, after that I shall be permanent, everlasting, eternal, not subject to change, I shall endure as long as eternity, would it not be an utterly and completely foolish teaching? Now, previously as we discussed under the standpoints, so the last standpoint is that thinking that there is a self here, there is a small self here, a weak self here, and after the death, so I become united with the strong self, the almighty self. So that's the wrong view that one had. Now, through the practice one may understand, okay, internally there is no self. So one is again and again investigating the form aggregate, and more one understand its true nature. So one may understand you can't have anything substantial within this physical aggregate. Everything is subjected to a kind of a change. It is very much like a flux. Even though it appears like solid, when we are carefully observing it, investigating it, nothing substantial available. Even the earth element, which can cause kind of a solidity, is constantly changing. So their manifestations are constantly changing. So likewise, when one is continuing particularly the, say, elements meditation, dhatu manasikara, so one may slowly understand, okay, there is no core, or there is no inner core in this body. There is no inner core for any of the physical world. Actually, even today, science have recognized that. So you can't, even though things are appear like solid, even though things are appear like compact, so once you properly investigate it, so one may understand, okay, it is not compact. So they are all like a flux. So in the flux, there is nothing substantial available. So So that understanding is challenging that previous wrong view. So if one is thinking this body is myself, and through the meditation of elements meditation, so one may understand, okay, there is no place that we can keep a self, no place that we can keep any kind of a notion of permanency. So this is how, in a way, one is slowly analyzing, trying to understand the true nature of the body, and that slowly eliminate the self-view with respect to the body. Similarly, one may try to understand the feelings, say painful feelings, pleasurable feelings, equanimous feelings, all these different types of feelings one is trying to understand. So one is observing their true nature, how they are coming, how they are changing, and how they are disappearing. And all these things more and more one is trying to observe. So one can't recognize a self within these feelings. So these feelings are utterly changing, completely impermanent. So then how can be a self here? And one can't maintain one's controllability onto these feelings, because they belong, or they are dependent on the contact. So depending on the type of contact, the type of feelings are determined. So one can't actually generate such feelings as one wish. So likewise, when one is practicing particularly, say, Vedananupassana, so that leads to a understanding that this feelings aggregate does not belong to me. There can't be a self, there can't be an inner core, there can't be an everlasting soul in this feelings aggregate. So similarly, if one is understanding the perceptions aggregate, so certain perceptions are arising. When we see that perceptions are arising, when we hear, say, certain signs are arising in the mind, when we smell, taste, go through tangibles, certain perceptions are arising. And to the mind also, certain signs, perceptions, memories, mental images, all happen to the mind. But they are coming and going, they are not permanent. And we are the ones unknowingly, or in a way ignorantly, attributing a self to those perceptions, attributing a person onto those signs. If one is able to stop that, so then these perceptions, these images simply come and go. They are not substantial. They are not so strong. We were the ones strengthening them, but now we have stopped that. So as a result of that, those signs slowly are disappeared. So then one may understand, okay, these signs or perceptions are also not substantial. So how can there be a soul there? So likewise, say one is thinking. So various thoughts are coming to the mind, various intentions are coming to the mind, various desires are coming to the mind. And typically we identify with them. So okay, I am telling, okay, I have a desire. So I am a lustful character, I am an angry character, I am a more speculative character. So likewise we identify with those mental formations. But when one slowly recognizes these mental formations, various kinds of thoughts, they have the nature to come and go. They have the nature to arise and pass away. And again, I have no control very much to them. So then, how can there be a self? So the thoughts appeared in the morning are not the ones appearing in the afternoon. What's going to happen in the evening are completely different. So which thought are we going to tell that this is me, this is myself, when all those thoughts are constantly changing? So likewise, the practice of vipassana actually are challenging to those wrong views. That wrong view, thinking that there is a small or weak self within oneself, and that self ultimately become united with the almighty self. So such kind of a view can't exist in a person who see the reality, who carefully observe one's different aggregates, So when one is constantly trying to practice vipassana, observing these different phenomena, so that kind of wrong view is slowly abandoned. So for such person, that view, that standpoint, that thinking there is a self here, and ultimately that self become united with the Almighty Self, so that kind of a doctrine become utterly a foolish statement. And so these are the things actually I like to discuss today, because next part actually we can take separately, again connected with the vipassana. So now Buddha is going to again and again to various aggregates, where he's talking about the feeling aggregate, perceptions aggregate, formations aggregate, form aggregate, consciousness aggregate. So all these different aggregates. So when we understand their true nature, maybe using various techniques. Say if you are practicing Kayanupassana, you are trying to investigate the aggregate of form. If you are dealing with Vedananupassana, again then it's a feeling aggregate. If you are dealing with Chittanupassana, which is the perceptions aggregate, it could be the feeling aggregate, and it could be the consciousness aggregate, and even formations aggregate. And if you are dealing with Dhammanupassana, it is very much the all five aggregates time to time you consider, you verify, you investigate. So likewise the four Satipatthanas actually help us to thoroughly investigate these five aggregates, and as a result of that the craving slowly become abandoned. So the wrong understanding, the avijja, ignorance, become less and less. So as a result of that, all the different wrong views no more arise in the mind who is having that kind of a proper view. So again I like to highlight that the proper view, or the correct view, right view, samma ditti, is completely different from the standpoints. Now dittithana, the wrong standpoints which can lead to wrong pernicious views. So the sammaditthi is not such kind of a view which is leading to a pernicious view, leading to a kind of a entanglement. Rather, when one is practicing sammaditthi, when one is properly being with the sammaditthi, so one's mind has to be relaxed, one's mind has to be cleansed, one's mind has to be fairly undefiled, not holding anything, not grasping anything, so one can't feel any kind of a stress, because one's sammaditthi is constantly allowing the mind to let go, developing necessary amount of wisdom, and that wisdom is take caring of not holding things, not adhering to things, not ruminating about anything, not entertaining any kind of proliferation, rather maintaining a very relaxed, very calm and unentangled kind of mind. So that is where the proper sammaditthi is operating. So that is what Buddha mentioned to Venerable Mahakaccayana. So when he is asking what is the proper sammaditthi, correct sammaditthi, so that is where Buddha mentioned, typically we take things as permanent, things are existing, things are everlasting, or we might take the opposite, okay, things are not existing, things are all mind-made, so there is nothing exist. So those are the two extremes, Buddha say, which are happening because of the ignorance. But the teaching of the Buddha is not taking any of those extremes, and he say, when this is available, that can happen. With the arising of this, that also can arise. When this is not existing, the other can't exist. With the cessation of this, the other also cease. So therefore, there's an interdependency. When ignorance exists, there can be mental formations. when mental formations exist, there can be consciousness. When consciousness exists, there can be name and form. So likewise, the existence, the coming into being, happens as a result of dependently arisen process. On the other hand, when there is no ignorance, there can't be mental formations. When there are no mental formations, there can't be the conditioned consciousness, the name and form. And then there can't be the manifestation of different sixfold senses. No contact then, no feelings then, no grasping then. So likewise, so the ignorance, when one is slowly abandoned, so mind has to be well established in wisdom. As a result of that, that wisdom takes care of non-grasping. So you can see in the Patissamuppada, the result of ignorance is ultimately the grasping, holding, adhering. But the opposite has to happen when there is wisdom. Instead of ignorance, instead of avidya, if one is having the vidya, the knowledge, understanding, wisdom, it has to cause non-grasping, letting go, abandonment. So the mind has to be quite relaxed. Mind has to be released. So wisdom takes care of the abandonment. So these kinds of strong pernicious view can't be in such a mind, because constantly mind is promoted for abandonment, letting go, relinquishment, not holding things. Not holding, not mere physical things, but even the thoughts, even the views, any kind of inclinations, any kind of standpoints, that even those can't be held, can't be held, can't be grasped. So mind is very much attuned towards letting go. That's why sometimes Buddha mention Viveka Nisita, Viraga Nisita, Nirodha Nisita, Vassagga Parinami. So Vassagga Parinami literally mean, so one's aim or one's culmination in one's practice is very much the release. So the accomplished in released, fulfilled in release. So the mind is attuned towards release, not towards grasping, not towards holding. So this is what actually we can discuss today, and only a little bit more existing in this sutta. Maybe we can discuss next week. So with that, I'd like to conclude today's Dhamma sermon, Sutta teaching session from the Alagaddupama Sutta. Now I open the session for questions. Cup. Yeah. So now, if there are any questions from today's Sutta teaching session, you can ask those questions. Priyanka, hope you can hear me.
Yes, Bhante.
Yeah. Actually, I can't stop sharing. I don't know whether you still see my screen.
No.
Okay.
I can't see your screen, Bhante.
Okay, fine. Yeah. So there is a question coming from this end, so we'll give the chance to that first. Yeah.
Sadhu, Bhante. Thank you so much for this teaching, and so many great things expressed. I wanted to ask a question, but just to give a little bit of background of what I'm asking is in regard to the self. There's this I or mine that is created that we want to protect, and that, of course, this is a very deep instinctual, almost really instinctually animal sort of instinct that is arising due to wanting to protect, wanting to compete, because we are animals and we do have animal instincts, but then, to become enlightened, to become free from this sort of instinct, it's going against these conditionings that we have, and to go to a more spiritual level of healthy, good qualities such as compassion and wisdom. And so because these are so deeply rooted in us, these tendencies to protect and to fight or to have greed or hate, and then from that standpoint we know that it's very deep, this karmic round of becoming, and then so when the Buddha teaches that the aggregates don't belong to me, when we and his explaining that we have to practice this, and it's helpful in meditation to notice, and when we start to notice that in meditation I've experienced having thinking arising with a sense of self and protection arising, and noticing how that doesn't feel good, and then how it is irritating and agitating, and you can feel that subtle suffering of thinking and having a sense of self. And then also in meditation, then a state of mind can arise, like let's say in walking meditation, when the body and mind have become united, and it's more of the experience of the body and the mind together, feeling the experience of walking, and you can feel how this is much more peaceful and calm, and much more fully alive experience. And so you begin to understand the truth of the teaching, and we begin to have we have a faith that the Buddhist, what he's saying is true, that thinking and a sense of self is suffering, and that if we see that actually when you're having an experience of the body and the mind being united, and there's not a sense of self arising, and if it does, it's just abandoned quickly because of the strong truth of the feeling of the body and the mind as not self. Mm-hmm. You feel this sense of not self in such an experience, more of a sense of this doesn't belong to a sense of I, that thinking self that is causing agitation isn't involved, and so it's not owning this, it's not calling this mine. So we start, when we start to see these things in our practice, it's still not enough. We have to keep practicing. But then my question is, how do we begin to incorporate this into daily life? And because that's when we really are, challenged, when we really have a sense of self arise, and greed and hatred is within relation to other people. So, exactly. And that's how we're so strongly conditioned from society as well. Where society supports competition and materialism, and that's just the sort of continuation of the animal sort of instinct of trying to fight and compete and get what is yours, and this supports greed, hate, and delusion. So how do you suggest practicing, bringing this practice of not self into our daily life?
Very interesting. So, the daily life in the sense, as we are continuing our daily activities. Say, for example,
particularly with people, like dealing with people.
Yeah, exactly. Now, say you are doing your duty,
yes,
and someone is coming and criticizing it.
Yes. So
immediately the sense of I can arise. So I am doing it properly, and why he is coming and blaming me, why he is coming and criticizing, then you can do it better than me. So likewise, I can go to a kind of a sense of I.
Yeah.
So there we can recognize, so what did I take as me or myself? So what is the type of aggregate I am taking as me or myself? Now, say for example, say I am doing the duty. So the duty probably I am taking as, okay, this is my duty.
Yes.
So I am doing this duty for a long time and this is my duty, and he is coming and attacking my duty. So now I have a strong attachment to the duty and I recognize duty as mine, and then the strong I can arise because of that. Well, one interesting statement by Venerable Ananda, where he mentioned that what Venerable Punna Mantaniputta taught him when Venerable Ananda was new to the Sasana. So Venerable Ananda is newly ordained, and at that time Venerable Punna Mantaniputta seems to be an Arahant already, and he again and again advised Venerable Ananda, Upadayatiko Ananda Asmiti Hoti no Anupadaya. Ananda, this the sense of I may arise only when there is grasping. So when sense of I arise within ourselves, therefore we can check, so what have I taken as, what have I grasped in the first place? What have I grasped? Am I taking this duty as myself? Or am I taking my reputation as belong to me, as myself? So I am reputed as a person who is doing my duty for a better way. Say, say I'm a person who is renowned for that. Okay, you are not neglecting your duties and you are doing your duties properly. So others have already praised me, and I am recognized that as myself, and I am reputed for that. And now this fellow is coming and challenging me. So that self of I, the sense of I may have arisen because I have prepared a self out of that kind of a reputation even, or maybe that kind of the duty which is assigned to me. And again there may be a kind of a sense of I because of the seniority. Say suppose there's a junior coming and challenging you, then you identify yourself as I am a senior monk. So I am taking that seniority as myself, and I am taking that strongly. So that I am taking that the conventional reality as a very strong realistic thing, rather than thinking, okay, it is just a mere convention. So I am strongly adhering, I am strongly holding that convention that I am a senior monk. So that is also a kind of an attachment. So likewise, I can, whenever the sense of I arises strongly within myself, I better check what have I grasped at this moment. Have I grasped any kind of a form aggregate? Did I grasp the feeling aggregate? Did I grasp the perceptions aggregate? Did I grasp the formations aggregate? Or did I grasp the consciousness aggregate? So if I am able to understand any of these is something that I have grasped right now, so that may be the one causing this I. That may be the one reason, giving the strong reasons, giving the strong support for the sense of I. Because if there is no grasping right now available within the mind, there can't be a strong self-view. There can't be a strong sense of I within the mind. So the grasping is a kind of a prerequisite or precondition for the sense of I to arise. So therefore, as a practical, practice, as a practical point, we always therefore can be recognized. So what is the thing that I am grasping right now as me? Which aggregate as me? Which aggregates as myself? So sense of I has already arisen. I am now not thinking about that, but I am seeing what have I taken something as grasped. Which aggregate did I grasp? And if you find out that, then probably you can recognize how it is shooting out, how it is promoting the sense of I. So therefore that is one thing. And the other thing is especially the thoughts. So the thoughts are always arising, promoting a self. Now when the mind is completely calm, say there is no inner chatter at all, there is no any conceptual proliferation at all, then there can't be a sense of I, strong sense of I. But the moment there are thoughts available in the mind, so inside those thoughts there is a promotion of I. There is a kind of self-promotion, there is a wrong attribution taking you to a kind of a wrong understanding. There is, I was doing that on the last month, so I was doing that 2 weeks ago, I was doing that 1 week ago, today also I am doing, so I am permanent. So I am linking these different episodes of my life and then connecting all together and recognizing as a person. So likewise, these different events actually I recognize, these different events I possess, and ultimately with my ignorance, with the craving, I link all these different episodes, different phenomena together and combining together, and then I am making a self. So these kind of things can happen, and the main culprit is the thoughts. So the thoughts will take care of doing all that and then promoting, yes, you see, I mean, this is true, this you see, you did that, and you are the one did it, and you are the one did it properly more than the others. So likewise, kind of self-promoting thoughts are really a culprit operating within our mind, always trying to convince us that there is a self. So at that moment, if I understand, okay, they are merely thoughts. They are thoughts. They have the nature to come and go. So rather than being deluded by the sense of I available in that thought, if I see how this thought is coming and going, say you are able to maintain a calm, relaxed mind. Suppose there was no thought at all at that moment, and now a thought is arising, and how that thought is arising, I mean, when the mind was completely silent and now a thought is arising, and you look at it, maybe it is trying to promote a self, but you are not getting deluded by that. You simply stand back and look at it. Since you are not promoting it, it may slowly fade away. So now again the sense of I is not available. It tried to tempt me. So that thought came in front and it tried to tempt me. Yes, there is a self. You see that you are a good person, you are a good man, you are a good monk, you are a senior monk, blah blah blah. But you simply saw it as a thought, kind of a deluded thought, kind of a tempting thought, but you were able to stand back. You didn't get entangled with it. You didn't identify with it. You were able to simply step back and watch it mindfully with some wisdom. Then slowly that thought will fade away. Again you are relaxed. Again mind become unagitated. There is no fear, there is no disturbance, and mind is resting again. So likewise, actually the best possible place is the other times, not during the meditation even. Because in the formal meditation time, we are well prepared, so most of the time there are no defilements. But the other times, when you are talking with someone, when you are doing our duties, when you are engaged with some other activities, so those are the times actually the defilements are in operation. They are trying to delude us. So that is the time actually we have to practice also.
Thank you, Bhante.
Yeah.
I've noticed lately I have been when I remember very clearly, when these instances come up and the defilement comes up, that I will go and I'm writing it down, and it helps me to say, oh, just what you're saying, I think that this person is, I have this view about this person, and that I'm affected by it in this way, it makes me angry or something like this, and to identify things just objectively in that way, it takes it doesn't, somehow that, it's not myself anymore. It's not, I don't own that, it's just, I'm identifying it like in meditation and saying, oh, it's this, and it has this quality, this idea has these qualities, and I'm believing this, I'm holding a view of such and such about this person or about myself. Actually, I look at both, I'm holding a view about myself as being very good, and you can't challenge me. I must be good, I must be seen as good, and this person is, like
Not that good.
doing something to challenge that, and you start to understand, but it loses its power. It's like in meditation, it drops,
Exactly.
it loses its
Exactly.
strength, but it's really good because it makes me stop. If I don't identify it, it just can continue and proliferate
Exactly.
and continue in my life.
Exactly.
Whereas if you just use your daily practice as a sort of a mindfulness training to identify, and then it becomes it loses, as in meditation as well.
Exactly.
Our thinking just drops off when we
Exactly.
recognize it.
Yeah. Very
So
true.
you would say that's
Saying the same
good
thing.
practice.
Yeah. I mean, during the practice, so during the other activities, so those are the places the strong self-view can arise,
Yeah.
and at that moment we have to practice. It is not that you become deluded at that moment, and then later during your practice you are trying to analyze, and that is also something good if you couldn't do that at that very moment.
Yes.
But the best thing is to do that at that very moment.
Yes.
So-
I haven't gotten to there
Yeah.
yet, but
Yeah.
usually.
Yeah. So because we have to be aware what is going on in the mind
Yes.
every time.
Yes.
So now the practice is not that only limited to a evening sitting or evening walking or something like that. Rather, from the moment you wake up, so you have to take care of the mind and what the mind is thinking. Is there any self-view arising? If there are any thoughts arising from promoting a self, so likewise I have to be vigilant about the thoughts. So are there any self-attribution in these thoughts? So likewise, I have to be careful about the thoughts because these thoughts, if I entertain, if these thoughts if I promote, ultimately they overpower the mind. They prepare a self, and I may have a strong self-view. I may have a strong sense of I. So therefore, maintaining a very careful attention on thoughts is extremely important. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yes. Okay, those are the questions, Priyanka, from our side. If you have any other questions from your side, we can give chance.
Yes, Bhante, there is one hand raised.
Yeah.
Yasalal, you can unmute the mic and talk now.
Okay, thank you, Priyanka. Thank you, Bhante, for the Dhamma talk today. Bhante, towards the end, I think, let's say towards the end, there was mention about ignorance, and also that is kind of being on the dependent, like conditional situation due to the conditionality can also contribute to this ignorance. Yeah. But based on that, I was just I thought of putting my question like this, like Bhante, we always see that in the seeing process, there's nothing else but only the seeing.
Mm-hmm.
There's no person seeing. So but that I have like a high level understanding of that. I also have some understanding bit more than that. So my question is maybe if my understanding is correct. So in this case also, Bhante, like when it says like a ditte, dittamattang bhavissati, when it says that there's only seeing, does that mean it's also because that seeing was conditioned according to my perceptions or my all those aggregates, 5 aggregates? That's why it means by only there's no actual person seeing. Is that how I should understand it? Or is
Yeah, actually one thing is that when I see something, if I do not stop it at that level, if I can't keep it to the level of mere seeing, then definitely I start coloring it, definitely I start putting my own likes and dislikes into it, and then only the full turmoil going to happen, then only the full entanglement going to happen. If I am able to keep it just to the mere seeing, then my inner traits, inner conditioning, inner likes and dislikes may not color the picture. So because there is no internal contribution to the experience, rather I was able to keep it to mere sense level. So seeing has happened through the eye, and it is suppose it's a sight, but I am not adding my own stuff into the picture. I am not thinking about it at all. Rather, a kind of a very basic level of recognition has happened. Okay, I recognize. Okay, this is a man, this is a woman. That's it. I recognize this as a mere sight. That's it. But I didn't go thinking about his name, his culture, his upbringing, and his behavior, and what he did to me, and what he's going to do to me, and how I helped him, how he helped me, or how he criticized me, and all these things are past experiences. Now I am putting to the picture. So all those are happening in the form of various thoughts, and they are not happening at all. Suppose you are seeing the person, but your mind is maintaining the silence. Suppose in such kind of a situation, say you have seen a person, true, you understood also, but how about keeping the mind silent? It was silent before the scene, before the sight. During the sight also it was silent, and after the sight again it is silent. So if we are able to maintain that kind of a mind, then that means we are not adding our stuff onto the picture, and mind is not disturbed. But it doesn't mean that we didn't see. We have seen also.
Yes. So, but it also says like there is only mere seeing, only there is no person seeing.
Mm-hmm.
So what is that no person seeing part?
Yeah, that is also a very interesting part actually highlighted in the Kalakarama Sutta. So Buddha mentioned when someone see a sight, so Buddha mentioned apart from seeing, the activity seeing, there is no anything that we saw. That is one statement. And then Buddha mentioned he is not proliferating on what has seen. That's the next statement. The third one is, if one couldn't see the thing, even according to that, he is not proliferating, thinking that he couldn't see. I had to see it, but I couldn't see it. I couldn't saw it. Or say it is worthy of seeing. So likewise, he doesn't have any kind of a thought. The last one is what you are referring. There is no person who is seeing. Dattarang na manyati. So that means the person, as a person who is going through that sight, there is no such thing. What is available is mere seeing. SEEING. So the activity is only the one available. Other than the mere activity, there is nothing substantial here, nothing substantial outside, and as a result of that, there is no self who is experiencing the sight, who is experiencing the seeing process. But the mere seeing process is only happening. So actually that Buddha expands to the other senses. So similarly, there is no person who is hearing or listening. There is no person who is sensing the smells. There is no person who is sensing the taste. There is no person who is sensing the tangibles. And again, there is no person who is cognizing thoughts. You probably can remember there is one interesting English book by Mark Epstein called Thoughts Without a Thinker. Thoughts without a thinker. So the thoughts are there, but there is no thinker. So very interesting. I mean, how he has sort of highlighted that part. But Buddha has highlighted all the senses, telling there is no person going through it, but the activity is available. Only the mere activity is happening as a conditioned process.
Right, Bhante. Okay. Thank Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Much merit. Thank you, Bhante, for the explanation.
Okay.
Bhante, there is a
No more.
raised hand I can see.
Okay, then we have spent about 1 hour and 15 minutes today. So, and we were able to discuss some interesting points available in the Alagaddupama Sutta. And all the merits we were accumulated, let's share with all the celestial beings and with the past relatives and whoever in need of merits. And we wish these merits help us also to attain path, fruition, Nibbana. Keeping these good wishes in our mind, let's recite the traditional verses. Ettavata ca amhehi sambatang punya sampadang sabbe deva anumodantu sabba sampatti siddhya. Ettavata ca amhehi sambatang punya sampadang sabbe bhuta anumodantu sabba sampatti siddhya. Ettavata ca amhehi sambatang punya sampadang sabbe satta anumodantu sabba sampatti siddhya. Akasatta ca bummatta devanaga mahiddika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakkhantu sasanang. Akasatta ca bummatta devanaga mahiddika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakkhantu desanang. Akasatta ca bummatta devanaga mahiddika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakkhantu mamparang. Idang vo ñātīnaṁ hotu sukitā hontu ñātayo. Idang vo ñātīnaṁ hotu sukitā hontu ñātayo. Ñātīnaṁ hotu sukitā hontu ñātayo. Imina punya kammena māme bāla samāgamo. Satang samāgamo hotu yāva nibbāna pattiya. Imina punya kammena māme bāla samāgamo. Satang samāgamo hotu yāva nibbāna pattiya. Imina punya kammena māme bāla samāgamo. Satang samāgamo hotu yāva nibbāna pattiya. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.